Everybody, my name is Joe Standard, and this is the case study for Module 16 for EDL 854. So, a little bit before we get started, here are some facts about the case. We have this foundation that supports the fine arts curriculum at Briardale Elementary. Mr. Barely is the president of the foundation for this year. He decides he's going to create a fundraiser that is a raffle for cash. Now, before he took over the position, he had an orientation that went over, what he needed to do as president. And he learned what to do, what not to do. Um, but still, he decided to go ahead with this raffle. Uh, and he even presented his idea to the foundation, and they were full support of him for this idea. The raffle was held at Briardale School, but someone did tip off the sheriff's department before the raffle, and Mr. Barely was arrested for a misdemeanor and he was put on probation. And now the school has a publicity issue at hand because not a lot of people are too happy with the fact that uh, the money was taken or that, a fundraiser that was held at the school, police were involved. It's not always a good thing for the school. So some legal and ethical issues that arose from the situation. I know that the school's image has been harmed. They were involved with something that was illegal by state standards, even though they were not fully like the ones in charge of it. But the school and the district, it still happened at on their building and during their event. Student programs may have been harmed as well. Support for the foundation might dwindle, so the support is probably going to dwindle as well. And with that, it's going to hurt the fine arts program for the school. Uh, Mr. Barely now has a criminal record, and Mr. Barely broke the raffle for cash law as well. That's a law that was broken. Um, that is a legal issue there, and the school, has to figure out what they need to do next. So exactly what happened was that Mr. Barely broke a law while conducting a fundraiser at the school, and now the school is left to pick up the pieces. So some known and unknown facts about the people involved. First known is we know that Mr. Santos is the principal. Mr. Barely is in charge of the Briardale Foundation. We have Mr. Morley, who is a college rival, who's in charge of a different elementary foundation in the district, which causes friction between, Mr. Barely. I know that the foundation accepted Mr. Barely's raffle idea. The sheriff, who we have, who wound up arresting Mr. Barely. Members of the community were at the raffle and they bought the tickets. That is known. And we know that the teachers there at the school in the district are morale's pretty high there, and they probably want to keep it that way. Some unknowns, some questions that I have is for like Mr. Santos. Did he explain the legalities of fundraising? Did he know that the fundraiser was illegal? For Mr. Barely, did he know that the fundraiser was legal or illegal? Uh, it is unknown who turned in Mr. Barely, even though we could speculate and say, hey, it was probably Mr. Morley since they do have a college rivalry. Why did the foundation not look into the legality of the fundraiser? Because they did approve it. Surely somebody there would have been like, hey, this is illegal here. And for the community, did they get their money back? Or is it now evidence? Is the state's evidence now? Because if, they're not getting their money back, they're going to be pretty upset with the district over this one. So a little bit about the place. Know that the raffle is held at Briardale Elementary. Briardale is a staple in the community. People use that as a community center. It's for events and everything, so it's a very popular place within the community. And Briardale has 600 students that it's going to rely on the money that that fundraiser would have generated for them. Some unknowns: would have been legal to hold the raffle at a non-school location. Was it a school issue? Was the fact that it was against the law, or was it the fact that it was a raffle for cash? What state did this happen in? Because I know in the state of Kansas, it's a little bit different when it comes to raffle for money. So knowing, whether or not, how could we have made this legal, probably would have helped answer a few things. About the program, the school curriculum focuses on basic skills and the educational instruction objectives. All this is based on student performance. Briardale uses fundraisers to fund fine arts programming. Um, some things that I did not know is this a private or a public school? Uh, the question arises because, well, there's like two Harvard graduates, within the school district that, are on competing foundations in elementary schools. Is there grants available for fine arts program? Is there grants that this district can look into to kind of maybe recoup some of that money that they lost from the raffle? Or maybe so they don't have to rely on the fundraising as much. Will the fine arts program be hurt by this situation? Is this something that they're going to be able to continue afterwards? Or is funding going to completely be taken away from this foundation and it's going to be closed up? We don't know yet. So the stakeholders, um, some things that kind of keep in mind with the stakeholders is that if they, that would affect them. If they can't afford the curriculum, parents might move students to different schools or district. They might decide that, that this district cannot offer them what their child needs anymore. So now it's time to start looking at other elementary schools because there are plenty of elementary schools within this district, or maybe they're just tired of the district. So that's going to hurt the community. That's going to hurt the stakeholders. Another thing that's going to affect stakeholders is, the students leave. Will the teachers lose their jobs? That is a major question. The morality with teachers is fairly high there, and teachers start losing their jobs. Morality is going to falter a little bit. The foundation may be dissolved. This would be a big, issue for the elementary school and maybe even for all other elementary schools because they might decide just to get rid of it all. Um, so the foundation may be dissolved and that ability to raise funds will be gone. The school might lose community support. There will be some backlash from this. So the school might lose some support from the community. So the community stakeholders are going to be fairly upset about this if it's not handled correctly. The community and the school have a stake in what happens next. They You have to have a stake in this. This is a legal issue that happened, at a community building that the community uses, and a lot of the community members like this school. And if the school has to cut programs and everything, it's going to affect this community quite well. At this moment, stakeholders haven't been consulted, though they really should be consulted, and that will be a part of my plan in just a bit. Um, Really, for myself, as part of the stakeholders, I need to learn what the law exactly says. It's still kind of a mystery what the language is. So that is like one of the first things that has to be done so this problem doesn't like come back again. And a decision can be made with district and superintendent advice. It should not be something that the principal decides on his own, myself. This needs to be something that is made with the support of board members and the superintendent. So some possible options to look at to try to resolve this situation. We could always do nothing, which we know is not really the best option. Relieve Mr. Barely of his duties. Reevaluate the foundation's decision-making process. Make a public statement and contact a district lawyer. With each one of these, there are certain pros and cons. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the pros and cons here. If we do nothing, well, in a perfect world, it might go away. But then again, it might not. A pro for relieving Mr. Barely of his position. Community continues to support the school, may save the fine arts program, and it's going to help school from repeating another unlawful act as well. This will show the community that this sort of behavior will not be tolerated from any person within our district, whether they're working in a foundation or if they're working within a building. Reevaluate the foundation's decision-making process. the foundation may be saved from being dissolved then, to show the community that, hey, we're taking progressive steps here to fix this problem. Better decision making will bring back the support. Making a public statement. Community has a better understanding of the situation and creates better support amongst them if we get out in front of this and talk to the community about, what happened, what's being done to solve the problem. And then contacting the district lawyer just to be prepared for any legal actions because we don't know what happened to this money and we don't know what's going to be happening next legally. So we need to contact a lawyer. Now, some cons to this, well, if you do nothing, let's face the facts, the problem never goes away. The problem's always going to be there. The community doesn't forget, and you never know what's going to happen next. Relieving Mr. Barely of his position, Mr. Barely could rile up the other community members. He might say that he was misled. Other things might happen as well. He probably thinks he was treated unfairly. Reevaluate the foundation decision-making process. Con for that one. Foundation leaders leave because they just don't want to be chastised on the situation, and nobody wants to participate anymore. Nobody wants to join this group because now it's got a stigmatism of, you know, the fact that they did something unlawful, and maybe they just don't want to even touch it. Making a public statement, con for that one, district could say the wrong thing. You see it a lot of times, on television and the news and everything. Someone says the wrong thing, blows it out of proportion, and now you've got a problem worse than what you started with. So that could always, blow up in your face. And it opens yourself up for liability in those situations as well, if that's the case. And if you contact district lawyer, you might have consulting fees, so that one might affect you more financially than anything. So the best option that was decided to make was have a meeting with the board, superintendent, and foundation members about the removal of Mr. Barely. That is the best option at this moment because it's going to discuss with the stakeholders within the community, and Mr. Barely cannot stay. He did something that was unlawful. That is not good for the community. That is not good for the district. That is not a good face to keep. Something has got to be done with him. So to implement this, meeting with the superintendent and board members to discuss the situation and the removal of Mr. Barely. So we'll have this discussion, see what, kind of talk about, how we're going to bring this up, whether or not this is a good idea, weigh the pros and cons of it. Have a meeting with the foundation about the situation and tell them that Mr. Barely is no longer in charge, to let them know that a new person will be taking over. Then having a discussion with Mr. Barely about his termination. Um, just have a conversation, be honest, be upfront. Mr. Barely will probably understand as well as long as you're communicating with him. I'm sure he realizes that he's done something wrong and something that is detrimental to the community. And make a public statement. Let them know, let the public know how the situation was handled. And then plan B, just in case that doesn't work, restructure the foundation. All fundraisers must have board and administration approval. That's just how it needs to go if that situation arises that way. So, standard component number one, the building administrator understands the importance of and how to evaluate, develop, and advocate for data-informed and equitable resourcing plan that supports school improvement and student development. So getting rid of Mr. Barely opens up the possibility for the foundation to continue raising funds to support students with fine arts. I believe that shows the requirement for standard component one. For standard component number two, the building administrator demonstrates the capacity to develop a plan to evaluate resources needed, use data ethically and accountable to develop a multi-year resourcing plan aligned to school goals and priorities, and advocate for resources and supported needs. This is shown through fundraiser supports the curriculum and the fine arts program, reevaluation of the foundation's decision-making process, and see if grants are possible to fund fine arts. For component number three, candidates use his or her comprehensive understanding and capacity to undertake and implement this work within a school setting. This is shown by being transparent with the community and distancing ourselves from the person involved. So thank you for watching this video over my case study. I greatly appreciate it. Have a good day.